Welcome to Politics Done Right on KPFT. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Give me a call at 713-526-5738. That is 713-526-KPFT. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right on KPFT. My name is Egberto Williams. Thank you for spending this 1 hour with me. We are going to have a whole lot of fun today, I hope. Not I hope. That means we're going to have some real fun, right? We're going to really take care of the issues. Folks, remember this is a call-in program. The number is 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-KPFT. And we have Roxy, who says it this way.
713-JAM KPFT.
Absolutely. How was your day, my dear Roxy?
It was good. I had some kind of a weird social interaction today.
What does that mean?
I was out, before I work here during the day at the radio station, and then so before I come to the radio station, I go get my lunch, and then I come here. Well, usually I go and get my lunch, and then I come here to eat it, but this time I had a little more time, and I went and I was sitting down, I was eating my lunch, mind my own business, and I was the only other person in the restaurant, and I was with this couple was on the other side.
Right.
And then this gentleman gets up and goes and talks to the man behind the counter, and then the man behind the counter just starts getting enraged, and he's like, "Oh, so you're going to threaten me now? Okay, let me call the cops."
Oh.
And I was like, oh my gosh. Mind you, I walked in, it was peaceful. No one was it was fine. You walked in, it was any sort of, restaurant. And so he's like, "Oh, so you're going to threaten me? I'm going to call the cops." And the couple kind of gets out, this is on the couple's way out. And then the woman stops and she says, "Okay, all right, call the cops. We'll wait. And I'm eating my sandwich, just like, oh my gosh, it's just so weird to see anyway, long story short, I ate my sandwich and I left because I was like, I'm not going to be here with it. So
you have no idea what happened?
I've had no idea, but it was not something I wanted to figure out the conclusion to.
Right.
Because it just kind of I feel like sometimes because since I wait tables, I feel like I can kind of relate to some people, so I related to this gentleman, but also I related to the customer as well, because what
was the cause?
I have no idea what the cause was.
Yeah.
Like I said, I walked in, and then all of a sudden and the guy behind the counter, got on the phone with the officers, and they were calling when I left, and I was, I'm just gonna go
and mind your own business.
Mind my own business. If I was there for the whole thing, I wouldn't mind my own business, but I was not. And so I was, you know what? I'm just going to go. Sometimes it's just weird. Sometimes I always say, I want to be the fly on the wall in that situation. I want to be the fly on the wall in that situation. Well, in this case, I was the fly on the wall in the situation, and I don't know if I wanted it to be.
I hear you. But folks, what are we going to talk about today? You know what we're going to talk about today? Let me tell you a few things, first of all, though. Last week, while you weren't here, Roxy, I was actually on, I was doing the engineering for Thinkwing Radio. So check this out. Last week, while performing my engineering duties on KPFT Thinkwing Radio with Mike Honig, a rather disturbing call came from a caller. The caller was not a bad person. The caller was not ill-willed. The caller simply bought into the tenet that the mythical free market can solve all of America and the world's problems. I do not mind folks having different ideological beliefs in most segments of our economy. In fact, it may even be great. It would be a great experiment to show what what would actually work effectively. Where these ideologies cause pain, financial distress, or deaths to unnecessarily to our fellow human beings or to our fellow Americans, one should not leave it up to some unseen, unknown, or so far failed market. When the caller implied that morality had no role in the implementation of healthcare, I was left flabbergasted. He seemed to be of the belief that somehow there was some intrinsic benevolence to our mythical free market. There are gray areas in every debate. However, there are areas where there are absolutes. Healthcare is one of the areas with absolutes. Those who want to complete mythical free market answers to healthcare have already been proven wrong. So, Americans need to not have had to go through the past decades of wasteful medical spending and medical, what I call, robbery. Simple arithmetic is actually the answer. You know, there's really only one solution to the problem, and that is Medicare for all. I don't know if you ever heard that term before. Have you ever heard that term, Medicare for all? Let me tell you what it means. Medicare for all actually means everybody's birthright is that they have health care. Wouldn't you like to wake up in the morning, Roxy, and just know that you have health care? Not having to worry about anything else? Think about it. Wouldn't you want to get up in the mornings and say, hey, I don't have to think about it?
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe this is me and my age realizing the importance of healthcare.
No,
and, yeah, and also I have to get it somewhere at some point because
pay for it.
Pay for it.
Right now, mommy's still paying for it. Mommy and daddy still paying for it.
Are still paying for it, and very generous that fact.
But when you're 26,
I'll have to pay for it my own, and I have my my boyfriend doesn't have healthcare, and I realize kind of how much of a hindrance that is.
It's a burden.
Yeah, and not to mention on top of that, the how expensive everything is.
It's ridiculous.
Like, we went to a 24-hour hot emergency, one time, and he couldn't be seen because we couldn't pay for it, and it's shocking.
It's crazy, but I got to do the blog post now. So
it's time for the weekly blog post.
And folks, this blog post I wrote a while back. This blog post was actually written, I don't know how long, but the title of it was called Obamacare is the Path to Single-Payer Universal Healthcare. Why am I bringing that up today? It's a specific reason that I'm bringing this up today, and it's because of that caller last week. And I wish that caller that called last week, if he's listening to the show now, he would give me a call again, because I went home and that's all I could think about. So here goes the blog post. I'm going to try to do it really fast because I have 3 callers already waiting. So here it goes. During the healthcare debate in 2009, many progressives fought their hearts out for a single-payer healthcare system. They argued for at least a public option. This would have prevented an unnecessary for-profit insurance system from gouging Americans sans strict regulations. Ultimately, both failed to materialize in the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Many saw the failure of both the public option and single-payer healthcare as a defeat. In fact, a large percentage of those who are against Obamacare oppose it because it did not include these options. In other words, they opposed it because it did not go far enough. Obamacare is a pathway to single-payer health care, folk. A few months ago, I stated that progressives should not worry too much. They need to be patient. I explained that Obamacare was simply a framework that would morph in my post, Obamacare First Step to Eliminating Immorality, that is healthcare insurance, where I said the following. Obamacare gets rid of the immoral parts of health insurance. The practices of rescissions, denied coverage for pre-existing conditions, and caps will be gone. Many new preventative screenings had to be part of every plan without co-pays. 80% of the premiums must go towards actual health care. There are several health insurance companies. Each one must have its own CEO, CFO, board, advertising, shareholders, building, and staff. The cost of duplicating all these expenses is a reason why up to 33% of every insurance premium goes into someone's pocket instead of into health care. We are asked to unlearn basic arithmetic in order to accept that the above system could somehow be less expensive or more efficient than a system where we all pay a premium to a single entity, and that one entity pays the medical bill for those who get sick. No advertising, multiple CEOs, CFOs, board, shareholders, expenses, etc. During the healthcare debate, there was a public option that would have simulated the latter. Lobbying summarily got it removed because had it made it into the act over a short period of time, arithmetic would prevail as the public option would be less expensive for any given plan. It would then turn Obamacare into a single-payer system by attrition. There are several different pathways to reach the same goal. It is, however, important that the paths are built. Obamacare is a path built with pebbles and stones. It is better than the mud path of years past. As riders demand a smoother path, they won't yearn for the mud path again, but for a paved road. Americans will not go back after tasting health insurance as a right with all the benefits mentioned above. Exchanges will become single-payer entities as health insurance companies are unable to demand the profits they want. Eventually, exchanges will morph into Medicare for all. The genius of Obamacare is not that it solved the problem in its entirety. The genius is that it made reverting to an immoral system untenable. Lo and behold, when browsing the New York Times this morning, I ran across the article titled "Envision the End of Employer-Provided Health Plans." The author said the following: by 2020, about 90% of American workers who now receive health insurance through their employers will be shifted to government exchanges created by the health law. According to a projection by S&P Capital IQ, a research firm serving the financial industries, in truth, the American system of healthcare, in which most people get their private health insurance through their employer, has always been rather odd. Why should quitting a job also mean you have to get a new health insurance plan? Why should your boss get to decide what options you have and negotiate the cost of them? Employers don't get to select our auto insurance or mortgage company. So why should health insurance be any different? The articles as well is well worth reading. The sanity of a single-payer healthcare system detached from the employer is common. Corporate selfish interests will make the process messy. However, it is necessary, more efficient, and less expensive. Terry, you are hot. Talk to me.
Well, listen, I'm going to have to diverge from your opinion for the following reason.
Sure, go ahead.
Full disclosure, I've been in the healthcare business since 1974, so obviously I'm a little jaded.
Sure.
My issue is whether it's single-payer or fundamental right or some other defined benefit program.
Mm-hmm.
The issue for me comes down to financing.
Okay.
Ultimately, it's going to have to be financed.
Right.
So, are you going to be some sort of a collective mechanism, everyone pay into it, and everyone get covered?
Yes.
Okay, fine. I don't have a problem with that. Where your analysis falls a little short, however, is that employer-based plans, the employer pays the majority of the health care costs.
Right.
So the employee, although the amount that they pay is substantial, it is not even approaching 50% of the cost of the care.
I understand that perfectly, Terry. I'm going to take that, and I'm probably going to be able to answer that with one of the other calls that's going to come in because I can see it flowing. I have like every line taken right now.
Perfect. So we'll go to somebody else and let's hear it.
We'll go back, my brother. I'll come back to you. Ray, I think yeah, come on in, Ray.
How you doing?
Come on in, my friend.
You know, I'm just looking here at insurance rates because I'm out there getting quotes. And I'm looking at the school district here. The gentleman just said about employers paying most of the money.
Right.
I'm looking at a contribution from the school of $225 and a family premium of $1,145, leaving $920 a month to be paid to the insurance company.
Right.
So it's not necessarily true that employers are paying the majority of that cost in all cases. Probably depends on the industry that you're in.
It depends. You are absolutely correct on that. And to Terry's point, I pay 100%. I'm a sole proprietor. I pay 100% of my insurance bill. Before Obamacare, it was costing me approximately $1,200 to $1,500 a month, if not more. When you take that, I had a $10,000 deductible. So I know what the total cost of insurance is. Now, when employers say, well, the employers are paying a large percentage of that, if you take a look at what has happened to wages over the last decades, because the wages hasn't gone up, but the employer costs per employee to some extent has gone up higher than general. So what has really happened is all these offsets went not into wages but into increased healthcare costs and other costs. So what really has occurred in the real world is that the wages remained the same, healthcare costs increased. Why did Go ahead, sir.
Significantly. They increased significantly. I might have to add that.
Exactly. So what really happened is, as it turns out, the employees have always paid for their entire healthcare bill. They just paid it in the notion or in the form of lower wages. I have to jump to another.
I have to ask you one question.
Yes, sir.
Can I make one point here?
Sure.
So one of the things I was doing today is I was looking at taking me and my children and putting us back on another policy because I, like you, am an independent consultant.
Right.
I do technology work.
Mm-hmm.
And my insurance deductible was $12,000 some odd dollars.
Right.
My premiums were $800 a month.
Right.
That is absolutely unaffordable. And the thing that bothers me so much about this health care deal, I don't know if we can sustain things until we get some single payer, some Medicare for all, because this is what we got is absolutely, I think in some ways, worse than what we had before, with the exception of them not being able to exclude people for pre-existing conditions.
I need to answer that in one regard. Remember, you said something very important. You said your premium was $800 and your deductible was $12,000. Sounds pretty darn similar to what I was paying. In effect, my deductible was $10,000, but I paid anywhere from $1,200 to $1,500 in premiums because we had two different policies. My wife was on a high-risk policy and we had another policy. But here's the kicker. Here's the difference in what Obamacare gives you. Your maximum out-of-pocket expense by law is $6,000 per person, $6,250 per person by law. So immediately that deductible that you thought you would have had to spend is no longer there. Likewise, we're talking about not being able to be rescinded. We're talking about not being able to be dropped based on some false cap. And if you take a look at your old policy, every one of our individual policies at some time had a cap. So it is marginally better. It's nothing, and the only reason we got this bill is because deals were made. These guys weren't going to drop, and what President Obama had that no other president had is he was willing to make the deal to start the thing moving. And my thing is, unless you put one foot in front, you're not going to get anywhere until that first foot drops. After that first foot drops, we're on the way, and that's what I try to tell a whole lot of folks. I don't like it just as much as a whole lot of folks don't like it for specific reasons. It's not good enough, but I look at it as we are going to be the activists to make sure that it's better than what it is right now, and I trust that you will be one of those activists as well.
Thank you, sir. I'll continue to listen now.
Thank you very much, sir. Okay, let's go to Brian from LaPorte. Come on in, Brian.
Hey, actually from Little Rock. Just moved back down here to go to work.
Excellent. Talk to me.
Yes, sir. Have you ever stood in line and waited for the postmaster to mail one letter?
Yes.
Have you ever been in a VA and waited for 6 months for one treatment?
No, not at all. But I know I have friends who have.
Okay. Well, those are run by government.
Right.
Okay. This thing you're trying to implement and push along is going to be run by government.
Right. Can I ask you a question, sir?
We're all going to wait forever for any treatment.
Okay.
You have kids?
Yes, I do.
Okay. You have a daughter?
Yes, I do.
Okay. If your daughter is waiting for 6 months for a treatment, is this a good thing for you?
No, that's terrible.
It would be horrible.
It would be horrendous.
And it will happen.
Okay, let me go ahead and talk a little bit about what you had to say, sir, because what you had to say is very important. It's a lot of the tactics that are used right now. Let's talk about the VA first of all, okay? We have done wrong to our veterans as a country.
The government did.
No, Americans did. Americans have wronged their veterans. Period.
They were government appointed.
No, but let me finish explaining what I mean to say, sir. We are always gung-ho when it's time to go to war, and we're going to employ these veterans, we're going to take care of these veterans, and we never do. And when you talk about the government is not taking care of the veterans, let me tell you how the government is not taking care of the veterans. The government is not taking care of the veterans because the Veterans Administration is underfunded. The Veterans Administration is underfunded because...
That's not true. They had $50 million left over in their expense account.
It's not true. I have the numbers and I have the facts. Let me tell you about the Veterans Administration, my friend. The Veterans Administration is underfunded, and not only is the Veterans Administration underfunded, but it is underfunded because politicians do not have the gall to go to the American population and say the only way we can take care of the veterans that have fought these wars, that have defended this country for us, is to increase taxes to ensure that when they come back injured, remember during Vietnam, most of these guys that come back injured and that will need life care for the rest of their life, they normally came back dead. But now they're alive. Thank God they're alive. But we must take care of these folks, and we don't because we're not willing to do it as a country. And it's easy to say the government is not doing its job.
No, that's not true, because I believe every red-blooded American would do that.
No, sir. The polls have been out. They've asked Americans if they would want to pay more taxes for many issues. Now, the fact of the matter is the Republican Party has said sustainably and directly they do not believe in increased taxes, period. And the fact of the matter is you cannot get blood from a stone. Let me tell you a little bit more about healthcare and the waiting times and so forth. People talk about if we had single-payer systems, and people don't really understand what single-payer system or Medicare for all is. Here are some facts, my dear friend. Medicare has a 3% overhead. You know why it has a 3% overhead? It has a 3% overhead because it doesn't have to pay many CEOs. In a private system, you have hundreds of insurance companies. Each of those insurance companies must have a CEO that is overpaid. It must have a CFO. It must have advertising that it puts to everybody.
Haven't got to my point about the government taking so long to do anything, including your daughter.
And I think I'm addressing that in this regards, my friend. And it's important that you listen to it in the totality.
Okay.
You cannot, whenever people talk about government not working, they're speaking about themselves not working. What I mean by that...
I'm speaking about the VA not working.
No, sir. Sir.
Run by the government.
The government is...
And if the government is running the VA so poorly...
No, sir.
How do you think that they're going to be able to manage your daughter's care?
First of all, the VA has two portions that you need to speak about. Once somebody is admitted into the VA system, it actually has very good health care, and everybody who gets into the system has very good health care. The problem is getting in. Waiting for service is a problem. But I need to go beyond that, because we have to change the mindset in America. Our mindset in America is that the government is doing this bad thing. The government is doing this bad thing. The reality, it's not the government doing these bad things. The reality, it's the American people that's allowing the government to do these bad things, because we are so absent after we've elected people, after we've been indoctrinated by folks who have no desire of truth. we then leave the government to do things. You don't ever leave the government to do things. It is Americans who have to be Americans to stand up and say the government will do this. So whenever we say the government is not doing its job, we are saying Americans are not doing its diligent duty to ensure that the politicians it has elected is doing the job. I have to jump to another call, sir, because the lines are filling up. But during the process, I'm going to definitely answer your question, sir. So I want you to stay on and listen, because it is important that people stop being indoctrinated by the Kochs and others who tend to put the blame on all these issues on the government.
Answer the question.
Which one?
If your daughter is waiting 6 months,
my daughter will not wait 6 months.
Government-run facility. Is it going to be okay?
It's definitely not okay, and that's not the case. So I'll go to the next call and stay listening, my friend. Next call is John from San Antonio. Come on in, my friend.
Good evening, Egberto. You know, one of the most popular, well, there's actually two massively popular government programs in America that is really, I mean, there's very few people who disagree with these programs. Now, in the last 5 years, you have people calling in like the previous caller who somehow thinks that people on Medicaid, you know, tens of millions of people, which is a government program, a great government program which helps tens of millions of people, and people are so happy that this great government program is helping them and saving their lives that they don't want to have Medicare cut at all. And if you look at Social Security, another great government program which has cut down people, seniors and people on disability, and taking them out of poverty, another great government program that has helped so many people. You know, my father fought in World War II, and I can just imagine that if everybody had, you know, the attitude that, you know, government can't win. We can't win because we're representing the government. How can we win this war? We're the government. We're representing the government. What you were saying before, we are government.
Exactly.
I mean, we elect the officials. It is we the people. And when we elect these horrible people that are more concerned about money and greed and creating this society that only values money and puts all these false narratives out, it really is troubling.
John, I want to stop you right there before you make your second point, because it is very important. What you said there is very important. We have to be able to do it. It is our duty to be able to articulate that, because there are forces. It didn't start. I mean, the caller before. He's a nice person. He's a nice guy, and he believes what he believes because the way the system was designed, what the Powell memo did to create the infrastructure of deceit, the heritage foundations and all these other groups that are there designed to promote information that mislead Americans, that cause them to vote against their own interests. That's who have the cash to get these guys out. Luckily for programs like this and other programs, we can set the record straight. So it is our job as activists, it's our job of folks who know to try to get this message across, but do it in a manner that we earn the respect of those that are listening so that they will use us as well as a force of knowledge. But continue with the point you wanted to make.
Well, I just want to talk a little bit about the original point about single payer.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, we've talked about this many times on your show on Saturday. And, you know, I just want to talk about how in Vermont, the single payer is going to start happening in 2017. They're going to lay out the plan in 2015. Governor Peter Shumlin is going to do this. And you know, it is going to cost money. It cost last year. The state of Vermont paid $2.7 billion, the entire state, in taxes. It's going to cost an additional $2 billion, and that is the political reason why single payer wasn't passed. It's because people weren't ready to have this debate. They weren't ready to face the fact that if we're going to have a single payer system, we are going to have to pay more in taxes.
But you know what? I don't want to leave that open-ended. You're going to pay more in taxes, but you're not going to have the co-pays, but you're not going to have the premiums, but you're not going to have all the things. So while you pay more in taxes, all the other mega monies that you're going to spend go. So right now, it's interesting that what folks don't understand is that the cost, the totality of the cost, falls in a single payer system. That it is basic arithmetic. That if you don't have all the costs of it's not only because of the the extra CEOs that you have to pay. It's not only about the extra advertising that you have to pay for each individual company. It's none of these issues. The major issue as well is what you will find that doctors' offices no longer have to decide, am I sending a form to Cigna? Am I sending a form to Blue Cross Blue Shield? Cigna has these requirements. Blue Shield has these requirements. All these costs mean that you also have other people that you have to hire. And who pays that ultimately? Everybody pays that ultimately. So single payer is by definition, it's a numerical and it's not only mathematically correct, it is actually and historically correct. If we go to Japan, if we go to Canada, if we go to Germany, which has a hybrid system, if we go to England, which has a full socialist type healthcare system, every single one of those countries have much lower costs, and not only do they have much lower costs, but in the aggregate, their outcomes are much better than us. But I need to jump to another one. I'll keep you hot, John. Let's go to Mary in the Woodlands. Mary, come on in.
For you tonight, Egberto.
How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Yeah, there's so many things that we could say about the whole single payer. I think a very timely comment would be that if we could get rid of the employers out of the healthcare system, that whole Hobby Lobby decision would just be moot.
Exactly. And believe it or not, Mary, I think, I don't want to interrupt your train of thought, but I just needed to jump in here because I'd lose my train of thought there. But I think there are a lot of these things that are starting to occur, right? Mm-hmm. That while they seem like short-term, while they seem like wins for the right, I see them as short-term wins and long-term victories. Why do I see it as a long-term victory? I see it as a long-term victory because as women see what's been done and they start to revolt, the only other option that you have to maintain the Supreme Court's decision, which isn't something that is overturned on a whim, to maintain that is to then say, okay, we are slowly going to be, well, if this employer doesn't want to carry it, the exchange is going to carry it. And if enough employers start going, like the article that I mentioned in the blog post that I read, that article made the comment that says, you know what, by 2000, I don't remember it said 20 or what, 90% of all employers are going to be using the exchange, which is the first step towards saying if an exchange is taking care of these issues, that's the first step. The first step of a concentration of where people are going for their insurance, healthcare.gov. As insurance companies can't make the profits that they want to make, what happens? You know what happens. Go ahead, but continue making your point, Mary.
Well, one thing about employer-based healthcare that a lot of people don't really think about a lot is that it's a dreadful invasion of your privacy
right.
as an employee. The employer gets to know much too much medical information about you that they absolutely do not need to know. They need to know that you can turn up on time in the morning and do the job, and the rest of your health concerns should be no concern of theirs whatsoever. But just because they administer your health plan, they do. And that is, I think, one of the most serious invasions of our privacy. And now with this Hobby Lobby, if the employer is going to even get the upper hand in that situation, this is just too much. It's such an imbalance of power.
Right. Well, I mean, my expectation really is that these guys have gone too far, and I think there is a rude awakening getting ready to occur. I actually believe that for women, women have been standing up over the last few elections. Okay,
yep.
We had a bad term in 2010, but I actually believe even above and beyond gerrymandering of our districts, that women, Republican women, independent women, they're going to finally start to see what is really occurring. A patriarchal type of a government that wants to revert back to the Dark Ages. And that may sound pretty darn rough, but it's the truth. These are guys who want to control every aspect of our being. And one of the things that have always been done is you control the woman.
Yeah.
Okay, and you do that, and there's so much then that goes with that. And you know what? Even Republican women are going to sit back and say, oh my God, this is what these guys want to do. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work on more ways than one. But again, this is bigger than just the reproductive side, Mary, as you know.
Oh,
it
yeah,
is
it's
much
as
bigger.
Well as any of this other stuff.
Exactly. I mean, when we had the design of human beings, women were the ones that were designed to have kids.
Yeah.
Now, the thing about it is, this is an economic issue as well.
Yeah.
Because if women cannot control their reproductive being, we know if a woman gets pregnant, what it does to her employment. We know the whole, and what it does to the path of her career. We know all of that. So therefore, it should be her right to decide exactly how things are going to go.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's more than just. I don't want a conversation though to be only about Hobby Lobby or whether or not she should be able to have contraception or not, because our healthcare issue in this country is so much bigger. And today I really wanted to hit a home about single-payer healthcare and why it is the absolute only mathematical option that is there. And that any person not, or I shouldn't say any person, but any business that is trying to promote the issue in such a manner that says there is something, we're in a capitalist society, Mary. Mm-hmm. And I'm coming to you next, Gus, but we're in a capitalist society. All right? Yep. And what the only thing that discerns whether something must have a profit is if it's going to add value, added value.
Right. And the health insurance companies.
Insurance companies do not add value. They are.
And you probably went to that healthcare.wellcare. .us.
Right. Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Divesting from the health
right.
industry. That's what we
but you know what? I've been writing about healthcare, about the insurance companies not having value to healthcare from before Obama was President Obama was even a senator.
Right.
Because it was having a wife with lupus meant that we were always at risk. We were always at risk because the insurance companies could always play havoc with us.
Had the pre-existing.
Absolutely.
I want to make one real quick point, too, about the Medicare. And you said earlier that it has 3% administrative costs.
Right.
Now, the interesting thing is, and this is a matter of messaging.
Right.
You know how they talk about medical loss ratio.
Right.
And they thought it was a big deal when they raised it to 80 or 85, depending on what kind of policy.
Right.
Well, nobody ever says it this way, but if you were to express Medicare medical loss ratio, it would be 97%.
Exactly.
That's the flip side of that 3%.
Exactly.
You never hear people say that number because the right will never say that. They would never admit to that.
Yeah,
you have to compare them, apples to apples.
Right.
That's what people don't do.
Right. I mean, it is important. Gus, I tell you what, you just left. I really want to hear what you had to say. If you come on now, I'll put you in front of the queue and make sure that you go next. But here's the deal, Mary. It is so important that people realize that single payer. I mean, it is so important, first of all, that they realize that Medicare, first of all, is a single-payer system. Medicare is a single-payer system.
Stood alone, yeah.
And folks
if it
don't
wasn't part of a bigger system.
Right, and folks don't quite understand that, and they also need to understand that it's something that works. Okay, and because it is something that works, we even here in America, we know that it works, and we know that it's more efficient. But I need to get back to Terry, because I think Terry wanted to ask make some points about single payer. So I want to bring Terry back into the discussion.
Yeah, I want to listen to that too. Well, good. I'm glad to have had the opportunity to talk to you tonight. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for calling, Mary.
You're welcome.
Terry.
Yes, still here.
Yeah, go ahead, and you're making the point, and I hope I answered something about the total the cost and the aggregate, and not just that people realizing yes, their taxes will go up.
Right. There's no question that the economies of scale make single payer arithmetically correct. There's no question about that. The point is, however, that no matter how efficient the system becomes, there's always an imbalance on outcomes vis-a-vis new technology. And I'll give you the perfect example. So 10 years ago, there was no such thing as a lap bank. Okay?
Right.
And so now you have Medicare just approved, I think last year, or certainly within the last 18 months, they approved lap bands for, I believe the age is 14, down to 14.
Yeah.
So you can present as morbidly obese, chronically obese, be 14 years of age, and you can qualify for a lap band. Okay, that's great, and that's going to improve that child's health care. It's going to get them off and out of the pre-diabetes state, and all these wonderful outcomes are going to result from that. And it's going to decrease the cost of care.
Right.
However, there is a temporary spike from the uptake in lap bands applied to juveniles. And that cost is going to have to be amortized over time. So over time, yes, cost of care, cost of delivery of care will be reduced, but not initially. And that's the point that everybody loses on. They see this momentary uptake in the cost curve, and they freak out, and they don't understand that that's going to be amortized over time so that, the cost will be lower.
Well, I mean, the thing that I try to tell people, right, is that we shouldn't. Yes, we have. Whenever we're designing policy, we have to worry about the politics. But also, I think there are a lot of different areas that we have to be sure to ensure that Americans get reliable information. I mean, what you said there specifically with the lap bands and the cost spike and so forth with respect to how that would affect in that particular area is true. Now, if Americans are made to understand that, or given all that information, they can make an intelligent decision. The problem that I have is when you have groups, third-party groups that come in and lie. In effect, lie to people, lie that these things are more expensive, lie that you'll have these complete government takeover of these different policies, etc. I think what that does is we need laws, and people will talk about the First Amendment and free speech and free all this stuff, but I really wonder if free speech really means the freedom to lie as well, whether that is true. Because, like I said, if Americans are told the truth, I mean, I am one that don't sit back and think that Americans as a group are intrinsically dumb. None of us believe that. But if you listen to politicians, that is what you're going to believe. And if you look at the outcomes of our elections, it's not hard to believe that. And the reason it's the case is that we have companies that lie, and it almost seems like these sanctioned lies are accepted.
But why are lies effective? Why do the lies become effective? The lies are effective because the people who are being lied to do not have the educational foundation to know for themselves that what they are being told is false. So they accept the narratives that they are being fed because they don't know any better, and it becomes real to them. If I could just make one additional point.
Sure.
And this is really the wild card about single payer, and it's really the dark horse.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the real problem, or at least a real problem. If we were to switch to single payer today, universally, are we prepared for the unemployment rate to shoot up to 12%.
That is the one excellent point that we've discussed it, and I later on I'm going to bring John into the conversation on that, because we've actually discussed that on one of my coffee party shows, and that is actually one that is such a real issue. Okay, but here's the deal: there are a lot of other things to be done in the economy. First of all, I don't think we could do it in one swat. I think from a political standpoint, to say that every single insurance company that specializes in healthcare must now be out of business, I don't know what the amount of people, how many people we're talking about, but I would imagine 1 million point something people would be that, in these different industries would get hit. And not only, it's actually a bit deeper than that, right? Because the efficiencies mean that a doctor that had six people taking care of their billing only needs one.
Right. And then there doesn't need to be claims people.
Right.
There doesn't need to be claims examiners and reviewers and utilization review people.
Right.
And so forth and so on. So yes, it balloons very quickly.
Yeah. There's for a while you'd see a geometric expansion for all those that work in that industry. Not to speak about the restaurants that surround insurance companies that these people used to eat at. You're absolutely right that would occur. And I think when this transition occurs, there would have to be some other mitigating factors there. I mean, I'm one to say that, one of the reasons that we don't do a whole lot of spending in the government is because they're scared of inflation. Well, guess what? When that occurs, we'll have to reassemble the economy to put these people into other productive areas. But I want to hear John's point on that, because that's a pretty good point that you brought up there with employment, which we've touched on before. John?
Well, I don't think it's going to really have that much of an effect, to be honest, because, look at all the shocks that the Internet has caused. The Internet caused shocks to the journalistic community. It caused shock to the music community, because all of a sudden people can now go online and get their music for free. With journalists, they didn't have to go buy the New York Times or whatever paper they wanted to buy. They can just go online and get it for free. And Jared Lanier talks about this, and he was wondering why that they kind of promoted this model that eventually was going to really hurt their own industry. And so, yes, people will lose jobs. I don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. I'd be surprised if it was less than 0.5%. They're going to need people who have experience working in jobs in the government, working in as part of in the single payer system, which is, like I said, is going to come in 2017. Right now, there were $5.1 billion last year was spent on health care in the state of Vermont. So what the amount that they're going to save is going to be massive. And, people will find other jobs in other industries. It's just like any other shock that comes to an industry. The government, just because these shocks came because of the Internet, doesn't mean that it necessarily killed the economy. People just have to adjust. It's not like the old days where people had a job for 30 years. Now people have to change jobs more often. And so that's just part of it. As far as what you were saying before, I just want to state my point that, I am a real strong believer in single payer, and I love to study, the governments of, Denmark and Sweden and Finland and all the countries that you name have the great systems, Great Britain, France, and Canada. And there are some truths to the matter. The fact is that the doctors don't get paid as much in European countries. And a lot of doctors in Vermont, I was reading through the articles online about single payer, and that's one of the most common things heard is the doctors don't like it because they know they're going to take a pay cut. Just like the VA doctors don't make as much money as doctors in the market.
Right.
Part of it is it's a labor of love, just like other people who are, let's say, lawyers, who take on cases, for free.
Right.
And so, I mean, this is part of people that work for nonprofits and don't make as much money.
Exactly.
So the system will change, but will it be better for everybody? And unquestionably, the answer is yes.
Absolutely.
I mean, look at the success. Look at how people in Europe are so much more happy. I mean, they can't even imagine having
let me tell you, John,
system that America has.
And that is what I'm saying. Education, and I think that's what Terry had to say as well. It's about educating folks. But, John, I got somebody else in that I need to talk to. Hank. Hank, come on in.
Hello?
Yes, Hank.
Yeah. Hey, I've recently gotten an email regarding the incident with Hobby Lobby and a couple other corporations involved.
Mm-hmm.
The big excuse that they use is that, aside from the prima facie excuse of freedom of religion, is that why should we help pay for somebody that didn't care enough to get proper birth control or whatever? Why should we put the bill for that? And it's the same excuse they use for going against single payer. They say, why should everybody else pay the tariff for you to get your health care?
And
what they don't realize is that insurance works exactly that way.
Exactly. I was about to, when you had that little gap, I was going to say, what is interesting, and this is what we really have to get across to people, because, like I said, those people that are indoctrinated or that have gotten their talking points or have learned from those that finance bad information, those that finance lies, don't realize that in America, there's one thing that the right says that's very true. In America, ultimately, everybody gets health care, whether you have insurance or not. Ultimately, you get health care. The problem is that for those who don't have insurance, they get it much too late. They get it only at the time that the emergency occurs where they need health care, but they get it. But the fact of the matter is we all pay for it. We, the people, pay for those who don't have insurance. So when they had things like, we have a mandate. Well, you know what the mandate did? The mandate said, if you're just sitting back down there and not doing anything and you can afford it, you need to pay it. I mean, look at it right now. Most of the people, young people that don't have good jobs yet, they're paying $10, $15, $20 for health care. It's that thing about having skin in the game, and all those things so far have been realized not the way it should be, but these are the stepping stones towards that, which is what I speak about.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, if you really want to be frank about it, the only difference between when people say we have a great healthcare system, we have a great healthcare system because we have good doctors that know how to do their stuff very well. However,
in places we do.
Exactly.
Not everywhere.
Exactly. But what we've designed in our industry is we've designed a business model on top of our industry that is able to extract money out of people being ill. In other words, they add no value, but they see a big market and they extract value out of this market. I think
they're called MBAs.
And it is a shameful thing to do. But Hank, it is a shameful thing that we've designed a system in which we have allowed folks to make profits from just skimming. That's all they really do, skim. Right? Insurance. Think about an insurance company.
Profits before people.
Yeah, I've written several articles, and most of the articles, whenever I talk about the health insurance companies, I always say, I always ask people a simple question. If you asked me, let's say you hired me to pay your bills, and I said, and you had $1,000 of bills every month that you had to pay, and I said, okay, Hank, for every $1,000 of bills that I pay for you, you give me $1,300. What would you tell me?
Well, I'd say that's the way the managed care systems run off of Medicare.
Exactly. In other words, we just decided to give you some money to pay a bill. But Hank, is there anything else that you need to tell me, my friend?
No, that's good. Thanks.
Look, thank you for calling. Please listen next week. We'll have another good topic to go on, okay? Anyhow, I'm going to be closing out the show pretty soon. John, give me a quick 30 seconds.
Yeah, it was a great show. Really enjoyed it. Just want to remind everybody that Egberto also has a show on at noon on Saturday on the internet, and you just go to egbertowillies.com and see all his other posts there. And I'm glad that you're talking about single payer. I do think we need to talk about how we're going to pay for it, because this is part of how it actually goes through. And
absolutely.
There's a big fight in 2015 with a lot of corporate money going to Vermont and trying to not have this come into play.
We'll talk about.
We really need to watch Vermont.
We'll talk about that, John, and we're going to keep our eyes on that guy and bring it on to our folks here and get the message out. Terry, give me a quick 30.
Quickly, when you encounter yet another person who screams that it's the government, it's the government, it's the government, and the government can't do anything right, suggest that they go and rob a bank, and they will discover very quickly how efficient the government is.
Terry, I love that one. Terry, you've made my day. I love that one. That is so good. Look, my friend, you have a great one, okay?
Always. Talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week, buddy. Folks, remember, single payer is not what most people believe it is, okay? Single payer simply means we remove the inefficiencies from our healthcare system. Folks, go visit my site, egbertowillies.com, EGBERTOWILLIES.com. We have a whole lot more on this subject. Until next week, I will be bearing you. Buenas noches.
Thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. You can personally reach me by sending an email to egberto@politicsdoneright.com. Remember, Egberto is spelled E-G-B-E-R-T-O. Change starts with you. 90.1 KPFT gives you information not tainted by corporate interest. Please visit kpft.org and contribute. Let's ensure continued access to real information and news remain available to all. Again, thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right.
KPFT introduces new programming for your morning commute. At 5, join us for Attitude with Arnie Arneson. As the first woman nominated for governor of New Hampshire, and with a style often compared to Molly Ivins, Arnie Arneson starts your weekdays with wit and punchy political commentary covering the headlines. Then at 6, legendary progressive pundit Thom Hartmann joins KPFT with the Thom Hartmann Program. Syndicated across the country, as well as on our sister stations, WBAI in New York and KPFK in Los Angeles. Hartmann leads into Democracy Now! At 7. Attitude with Arnie Arneson and the Thom Hartmann Program begin morning drive time starting Monday, July 14th. This is 90.1 KPFT Houston, kpft.org worldwide.
When you donate a car, truck, motorcycle, SUV, RV, or boat, we turn what is often a burden to many people into great educational programming. Join others in your community by donating a car and helping create opportunities for local arts, music, and culture to flourish. KPFT's vehicle donation program offers fast, free pickup and towing from anywhere, an easy donation process, and the best charitable tax deduction around. Call 1-855-KPFT-CAR or visit kpft.org to donate. Again, that's 1-855-KPFT-CAR to help out now. Thanks. This is 90.1 KPFT Houston, kpft.org worldwide.